Well, I don't know if you remember, Augusto, but the saviour complex was very popular in the West for a long time. Even when I was growing up, our globalist propaganda in schools was about telling kids that they were born privileged. And at this stage, they hadn't yet divided Australians into race or anything. But it was more the fact that if you're Australian, you're privileged, and therefore you have to give huge amounts of money over to the third world in charity. Now, lots of kids would then go on gap years to Africa, not because they particularly wanted to, but because they were socially rewarded for doing so. Now, if you fast forward to 2024, we've now got the victim oppressor narrative going on. And suddenly, being a white Australian means that you're not privileged, like not just privileged, you're also an evil oppressor. Now, that's a problem if you're a kid with a white saviour complex. Do you think that's why we see some of these kids have a desire to turn themselves into victims? Victims of gender, victims of sexuality, victims of various health conditions. And if they can't be a victim, they want to be an ally of a victim group, which is almost the same thing as identifying as a saviour. Does that come close to explaining what's going on? Because people are struggling to understand this ideology that our kids have.
Well, perhaps this is actually unconsciously social Darwinian. The point is that some people actually think in terms of the group. And when it does think like that, when a person thinks like this, he is actually conditioned to perhaps believe that some groups are better than others and they can help others. So the Aborigines are being victimized by this culture that claims that the whites will give them an answer through the government, which is a form of unconscious racism, because it's actually turning these people into dependent people, depending on government in order to survive. And I think this is cruel. And I think this is actually what causes more misery, because we cease to have your independence and you cease to have self-sufficiency, not only for yourselves, but for your families as well.
Yes, I think you're quite right there, Augusto. And look, thank you for those insights into the propaganda that we have taking over Australia today.